The following video will cover the use and purpose of the Real Property Transfer Declaration, widely referred to as the TD1000. Every 2 years, assessors in Colorado must reappraise all of the real property within their county, using market data derived from comparable sales. The sales contract is rarely reviewed by the county assessor. To help the assessor with their sales confirmation process, the Colorado legislature has written into statute that any conveyance document presented for recordation shall be accompanied by a declaration prescribed by the property tax administrator. The prescribed form, the Real Property Transfer Declaration, or TD1000, is a document used by county assessors in Colorado in lieu of the sales contract. The TD1000 provides details specific to each real property transaction, which details become a portion of the data contained in the assessor's CAMA system. This information allows for verification or correction of assessor records and helps the assessor correctly classify and value all similarly classified properties. Appraisers in the assessor's office analyze the information provided on the TD1000 and make adjustments for such things as changing market conditions over time, personal property included in the total purchase price, or atypical financing terms. The form also aids the appraiser in weeding out or disqualifying those sales that are not reflective of open market, arm's length transactions. The TD1000 must be completed and signed by either the grantor or grantee to the transaction and must be delivered to the clerk and recorder upon recordation of any conveyance document that is subject to a documentary fee. This is not a recorded document, and all information contained on the TD1000 is confidential to the person who filed the form, the buyer, the county assessor and their staff, and the property tax administrator and their staff. The seller is only able to view the TD1000 if that party filed such declaration. Failure to submit a completed TD1000 form can result in a fine to the buyer of $25 or 25/1000% of the property's sales price, whichever is greater. We will now take you through the Real Property Transfer Declaration line by line. This is a paraphrasing of the Real Property Transfer Declaration instructions, which are available with the Transfer Declaration and will serve as a good reference while familiarizing yourself with the TD1000 form. Item number 1 requests the physical address of the real property that is being sold. This allows the assessor to link the sale to their records, as well as identifying the property's location. Item number 1 should never include a P.O. Box number. The mailing address and other contact information for the owner of record is sought at the end of the form, after item number 18. Item number 2 informs the assessor of the type of property that is being sold. This allows for verification of or updating to existing assessor records. Another benefit of having item number 2 is that it allows for one form to apply to all property types, whether residential, commercial, agricultural, or other. The first part of item 3 indicates the date of closing, or the actual date the property is transferred from buyer to seller. The second part of item 3 asks for the date of contract. Contracts are executed prior to the closing date. The date of contract is when the meeting of the minds occurred, and that is the date that the parties established the sales price. Item number 4 indicates the total sale price for the transaction, to include all real and personal property. After a sales price is negotiated and a subsequent purchase contract is drawn up, information related to the property being sold may come to light and cause the buyer or seller to renegotiate the sale price. In this case, it is helpful for the appraiser to understand what changes were made to the original contract and why those changes were made. Item number 5 asks if any personal property was included in the transaction. It is vital to identify the value of any personal property included in a transaction so that the appraiser can isolate the value of the real property only. It is the real property value that the assessor uses when setting adjustments, and ultimately value, in their CAMA system. Item 6 asks about trades and exchanges. In the case where a transaction involves trades of any additional items or property, the assessor will either adjust the sale amount or disqualify the sale altogether. Property trades that qualify for an IRS 1031 exchange do not always result in a disqualified sale. If the 1031 exchange represents an open market, arm's length transaction, the assessor will use the sale in their sales analyses and valuation modeling. It is helpful for the appraiser to know the existence of a 1031 exchange in case any additional follow-up is required. Item number 7 allows the assessor to establish that 100% fee simple ownership of the real property was acquired in the transaction. Any transfer of less than full fee simple interest represents a partial interest transaction and cannot be used as an indicator of market value by the assessor. Item number 8 asks whether the transaction is between related parties or acquaintances. The term related parties is not limited to family members of the parties to the transaction. Any prior acquaintanceship leading up to the transaction should be disclosed here, including spouses, friends, neighbors, business affiliates, and any other scenario by which the seller and buyer became familiar prior to the discussion of the real property transaction. Item number 9 asks how the property was marketed and sold. This may offer the assessor additional sources for property information and may help them determine if the terms of the transaction were arrived at in the open market. Item 10 asks the party completing the TD1000 to rate the condition of the improvements at the time of the transaction. Improvements refer to those man-made features that physically exist on the real estate parcel. Item 10 gives an indication of the property's condition from the perspective of the buyer or seller at the time of sale. The appraiser can then investigate any discrepancy between the condition rating in their database and that indicated on the TD1000. Items 11 through 14 relate to the specifics of financing the transaction. Adjustments to a property's sale price may be warranted when financing is not typical of the current market or if the financing is unavailable to the average buyer. An example of this could include a purchaser with poor credit who would typically not qualify for a traditional bank loan being offered owner financing at higher than current market rates due to the risk of the borrower. Another example might be owner financing done at below market interest rates in order to expedite a sale. Item 15 asks if an independent appraisal was obtained for the transaction and may be helpful in the valuation of commercial or complex properties with an otherwise limited availability of property data. This appraisal may also be helpful to the owner and the assessor during various levels of valuation appeals. Items 16 through 18 offer insight for non-residential property transactions. Item 16 relates to commercial property transactions where the sale price includes a franchise fee or a business license fee. If the amount of the franchise or license fee is substantiated, the assessor can adjust the sale price to reflect the real property only, or they may elect to disqualify a sale based on the inclusion of these types of fees. Item 17 informs the assessor when an installment land contract has been utilized to transfer real property. In this scenario, actual title will not transfer to the grantee until the contract has been fulfilled, which may occur a number of years after the contract was executed. The purchase price indicated in these contracts is typically not reflective of the property's market value on the date the deed is transferred, but rather the property's perceived market value on the date the contract was executed. Item 18 establishes if an on-site inspection was conducted prior to the sale of a vacant land parcel. If the response to this item is no, the appraiser may wish to follow up with the buyer. The assumption here is that a knowledgeable buyer will exercise proper due diligence and verify that the property was marketed as it actually exists. The on-site inspection does not necessarily need to be conducted by the buyer, but it should be conducted by a person competent with vacant land characteristics. The space following Item 18 allows the party completing the TD1000 to present any unusual or unique circumstances of the sale. These could include property-specific characteristics or external factors which impacted the price paid for the real property. They could also be details about the parties to the transaction that help the assessor establish a sale as arm's length or not. A property-specific characteristic that affects the price paid could be, upon inspection of a residence, it is determined that the roof will need to be replaced at a cost of $25,000. The sales contract is amended and the total sale price is lowered by $25,000 to account for the buyer installing the roof immediately after the purchase of the property. A comment that would speak to this might be, seller lowered the initial negotiated sale price by $25,000 for roof replacement. This comment would trigger additional research into the terms of this transaction, and the appraiser could then make the appropriate adjustment to the sale price. A circumstance affecting the arm's length status of the transaction could be, a vacant parcel is listed for sale at $150,000 and remains on the market for well over a year. The owner is now feeling pressure to sell in order to leave the area. When a prospective buyer asks what the seller is willing to accept for the parcel, the seller says, "Make me an offer." A verbal offer of $75,000 is accepted and the property transfers for that amount. The buyer might add the comment, "Seller accepted offer well below asking price." Again, this comment would trigger the appraiser to do deeper research into the transaction and might cause them not to use it as a comparable sale. The signature line establishes an affidavit that the party preparing the TD1000 has reviewed all of the responses and asserts that those responses are accurate to the best of their knowledge. This form does not need to be signed by both parties to the transaction, but it must be signed by the party completing the form, either the buyer or the seller. The contact information sought at the bottom of the form is specific to the buyer and will allow the assessor to contact the new owner with any remaining questions they may have. This is also the mailing address where the assessor will send future notices of value and the county treasurer will send the annual tax bill. The phone number and email information provided here is confidential and will not be shared by the county assessor with any other party. Remember, any document that conveys real property must be accompanied by a completed TD1000 when that conveyance document is presented to the county clerk and recorder for recording. Thanks for watching. We hope this video helps explain the process of completing the TD1000 form. If you have any additional questions, we suggest that you call your local county assessor or contact the Colorado Division of Property Taxation at 303-864-7777.